to those who don't have an isolationist friend, this sucks!
Yikes.
This sucks! Welcome to the Kindred Spirit Podcast, a show all about the board game Spirit Island. Here we'll talk about analytics and strategies within the game, as well as a plethora of other topics that can be found within it. Today we will continue our adversary series with the analysis of Habsburg!
Habsburg Monarchy!
Let's go!
Why did I do British?
I don't know. I'm kind of like Austro-Hungarian.
No, wait, it's Germany.
You can't.
We're wasting time, let's go! So I'm guessing you guys came to my house to record an episode on Habsburg?
Well, Laura wanted Snapple.
It was all the Snapple, really, so I'm gonna leave now.
Yeah,
I got
That
mine.
is why you have come, is it not?
Do you have any good food?
Ding! We got our one Lord of the Rings quota done. There you go, Grant. Alrighty, so today we are, as we said, going through Habsburg, which was one of the new adversary peeps that arrived in Jagged Earth. There was only two, Russia and Habsburg, so we've already done Russia. Now it is time for Habsburg.
Wait, Scotland isn't new?
They are also new, but they are in promo pack 2.
Thanks, Laura, for asking that question.
What's
That
promo
actually
pack
is a
two?
good
We bought that. Remember I said it was a little extra and it was okay that if I spend that and buy the promo pack?
And then you bought 3 new pairs of shoes, too?
Stop!
You guys always fight on this podcast.
You said it was okay, just don't look at the expense account.
I didn't know there were levels to this.
The promotional packs are like extra things that unfortunately at the immediate moment are kind of hard to get, which is actually really too bad. It's really a genuine shame because there are a lot of things that they introduce in promo pack 2 that, well, can't be gotten because they're sold out, and people who are selling them on eBay and other things, other private market websites, are like increasing the price by like a lot. So it's like really bad.
Because they know
That's
they're
rude.
rare.
Yeah, promotional pack 1 just had Heart of the Wildfire and Serpent. That's all it gave you. Promo pack 2 gave you Downpour and it gave you Finder, gave you aspect cards for the low complexity characters, gave you 2 scenarios, varied terrains and diversity of spirits, and it gave you the adversary of Scotland. So,
It's a lot.
Whoa.
yeah, promotional pack 2 has a lot in it. And unfortunately, you can't find it anywhere. So anyway, Jagged Earth has specifically, as far as adversaries go, Habsburg and Russia. So Habsburg are devious little fellas because they are constantly moving around with their livestock. I think that was actually kind of cool. We mentioned that a long time ago, which was some of the new ideas that they're bringing into the game. And livestock wasn't a thing that they've ever really done before. And their livestock is represented by towns who can go and move around because they're very mobile. And it's cool because their livestock actually gets unhealthy and easier to deal with if the land's blighted. And it actually kind of makes sense. So like as far as the standpoint of lore, I kind of like this world building aspect of, you know, we haven't really done livestock before and domesticated animals brought in pets as like a thing to Spirit Island. Sure, maybe just a single card, but I don't know. I think it's kind of cool when a card or a scenario or an adversary brings in like this cool new thing, this world building, making the world just feel just a little bit deeper, a little bit more fleshed out.
Before we started playing the game a couple of nights ago against Habsburg, you had brought up that lore, and it was just really cool right before we jumped into it to be like, oh yeah, there's building little towns all around the area, not big cities, but they have these rich livestock, but once the land gets blighted, you know, the livestock starts to die
They're very
out.
rural, by the way.
Yeah.
I hate that word, rural.
Rural
I feel-
juror.
Oh my goodness.
Rural juror.
Well, that's why I always say
Me.
rural. It's a rural. Yes, and as you said, someone who is on the seat in a courtroom who is from the country is a rural juror. I just feel like I have molasses pouring out of my mouth. Oh my god,
It's hard to enunciate all words. Pop the peas.
Anyway, but yeah, I brought that up because it was a way to make it easier to understand what this foe does to our friends who were joining us for that game. Because they're like, wait, what do they do again? And what was this rule again? And what was that one? And it was easy for them to remember that cities are only on the coast because they are a rural nation. So they have all of the inlands a little bit more farm-like and a little bit more open. That's why there's more towns and livestock inland.
Many towns.
And the only cities you'll find are the ones that are on the coast, unless Finder was just
The
like, hey,
trading
I'm going to
ports.
throw you over here. Anyway, so let's go and learn a little bit about this monarchy that assails Spirit Island, shall we? Emperor Joseph I inherited the Habsburg monarchy upon the death of his father, Leopold I, shortly after the conclusion of the War of the Spanish Succession, a short-lived attempt by Emperor Leopold to put Joseph's younger brother, Charles, on the Spanish throne. Secure in...
Deep breath.
That was all in one breath.
That was good.
Secure in his alliance with Sweden and Prussia, Emperor Joseph stepped back from territorial conflicts in Western Europe and focused on growing the wealth of the empire for his son and heir, Leopold Joseph. Joseph I chartered the Ostend Company in 1697 to bring trade from the East and West Indies through his Belgian provinces, setting up overseas colonies and beginning a program of resettlement of Hungarian peasantry. Habsburg colonies are newer than those of any European power save Russia, but have grown quickly due to their focus on nomadic herding rather than farming and infrastructure. Habsburg control of Belgium allows easy access to Atlantic trading routes, but puts the Habsburg fleets in direct competition with those of England, Scotland, and France. So there is your little who are these peeps, and what is the brief little description of who they are. Now let's look to the book to see what the book recommends as who is good and who is bad against such foes.
Can I just insert here? I didn't know this book existed. This
rule
bit
book?
of the book.
You didn't know the
this
rule
bit of the
book
book
existed?
existed. I
Did you
just
think-
found out 5 minutes
Did
ago.
you think I was just making up the rules as I went?
Nobody ever told me they were tips. There's a walkthrough.
It is in the kind of the back of the book, to be fair, but not a lot of people look at a rule book for lore things. They're
The
going to
back
look
of
for like the
this
general,
tome.
right?
We like the pictures.
But hey, I like lore. I like lore.
Lore? Lure?
Lore.
I like Laura.
Laurel?
Hey, not again.
Roll?
Okay, the book says that this adversary is notably easier for spirits that tend to let lots of blight get added. So, for instance, vengeance is a burning plague, they mention, or for spirits that can isolate lands, like downpour. I would also like to add wildfire for the former, and perhaps finder for the latter. This adversary is notably harder for spirits that are hamstrung by blight, i.e. sharp fangs behind the leaves. I would also like to mention Keeper as well, as they have a few things that prevent them from doing fun things because of blight. Or with scenarios that involve keeping the invaders from reaching a given place. Kind of sounds like the Great River. All guard the Isle's heart.
Ooh.
It does.
Well, yeah, this is good for control spirits
And
as
the
well.
thief one where they try to get off the board.
Oh, the thief one was fun. But we'll jump into scenarios later
Anyway,
on.
so that is who the book says as to yay or nay. So let's go ahead and learn about the actual rules. What does Habsburg Monarchy actually bring to the table?
Well, to start off, they have base difficulty 2.
Ooh,
They
I think
bring-
that's actually the highest,
That's
by
a
the
pretty
way.
rough
Really?
start.
As far as the base difficulty, I think that's the highest. I will
What's
double
Russia?
check that. They're only one.
They're only one, but
Yeah.
Russia ramps up.
They
Oh,
do.
okay.
Yep.
So these guys start a little higher. They have an additional loss condition of irreparable damage. We have to track how many blight come off the blight card during ravages that do 8+ damage to the land. If that number ever exceeds players, the invaders win. The notable exception to that would be for stone, when stone's taking the blight out of the box. So
Right.
stone
Stone
can
is
let
a
the
really
land
good
blight
counter
more.
for
I'm
this
surprised Book didn't
specifically.
get into stone.
Should have mentioned it by now.
Now, every adversary does something that tweaks your gameplay in a very specific way. For example, usually in a normal game, beasts are completely exempt from incoming damage, but Russia tweaks that formula by going after beasts specifically. Usually, in normal games, if a land is going to blight anyway, it doesn't actually matter how much damage was done, really.
That's what I like about the game, unless it's Sweden, which
Right.
you gotta keep track of. But typically, you're right.
But
it could be
Sweden tweaks this formula,
Yes.
and Habsburg also tweaks this. Very interesting. Depending on how hard they can hit you, they will actually win the game for dealing those heavy hits. So sometimes, I'm sure you as a Finder player have had things where you've conglomerated a bunch of people into one spot, and we're like, haha, I have one problem land, and yeah, they're gonna blight here, but you know, it's fine, because
It's
that's
just
just
one
one blight.
blight.
I have a healing card, I'll heal it.
Yeah.
And I'll just keep alternating between healing this land and letting it blight. Well, not going to be as consistent with that particular strategy, because if they smack you too hard and they do this much damage, then it's going to be like, ow, it actually matters now.
Especially in smaller games like 1 or 2 players, this can quickly make you lose the game if you just let things get out of control. I like what Jagged Earth is doing, like you said, Ryan, with the Russia and Beast were like indestructible basically until Russia comes
Right.
along. And then Habsburg, you had said the Keeper is not good, and that was like one of the heavy hitters
Yeah.
of Spirit Island up until this point. So,
Right.
and as we'll get into the rules with destroy and damage, like Habsburg really warps things. Maybe will make the Spirit Island player feel unsettled to what we're used to.
It definitely does shake things up. But from a point of optimism, Laura, I'd like to point point out that your boy, Resilience Earth, is actually useful here because it says track how much blight comes off of the blight card during ravages that do 8+ damage. Well, Resilience Earth requires you to do 10, so it never blighted in that regard. So I remember in past in past episodes, you're like, I like this character and I don't know why.
Nobody else did. Jerks.
But here's a legitimate thing that is a strength of Resilience Earth.
It's a pretty heavy counter, I would say.
I like stone better. But yeah.
Hey!
They have a stage 2 escalation.
They do.
Habsburg does.
What is it?
It is called Seek Prime Territory. After exploring on each board with 4 or fewer blight, add a town to lands without towns or blight. On each board with 2 or fewer blight, do so again. Ugh, we ran into this many times in our game.
These kind of things, I think, annoy me the most. Not because of what they do, it's when they happen. And what annoys me is simply whenever a game punishes you for doing well. It doesn't feel like this nuanced struggle between two opposing sides who each have to cleverly counteract the other in this tug of war in order to get an advantage in their contest. Rather, it feels like you're getting taxed for doing the things you're supposed to do. The game balancing here just seems so clumsy in these instances. They didn't get the better of me because they subverted my tactics. There was no give and take, no standard of strategy I had to maintain. The bad guys have things that will make them progress whether I'm doing well or when I'm doing poorly. It's not like the bad guys capitalized on a mistake I made. There's not as much pressure to do my best, not as much satisfaction in success when the bad guys have triggers that benefit them whenever the player does too well. So instead of being rewarded by a brief break in the pressure because you did well, instead you're punished with the bad guys getting something extra. Now, of course, I know that is sufficiently why it's hard. It's because if the player is doing good, there's an extra bad thing that comes in. I get it. I understand how and why it makes it harder. But after exploring on each board with 4 or fewer blight, that means if you're doing a good job and keeping a land clean, that means
here's a town.
You get more towns. Oh, I'm sorry. And if you're doing really good and there's only 2 or fewer, they get to do that again.
We hardly ran into again because we just couldn't keep blight off the board.
It does make sense though because they all have herds. They all have livestock and stuff. So if all of their lands are clear and growing fresh and the grass is quite green, the livestock is going to be like, ooh, sweet. Yeah. And they're going to be healthy and it's good, which makes total sense, but I hate it.
Again, it's changing so much within what we're used to for the past 3 years of playing this game.
Right, and I think this escalation doesn't gel well with my defender-centered mindset.
And as a Sharp Fangs player.
Right, because this is a faction that if the land is doing good, so are they. If the land is doing poorly, so are they. So
it used to be if the land is doing good, you are doing good. You Ryan
the
player.
Right. And now it's like the exact opposite. But it totally makes sense though as far as, with the livestock like we described. So Habsburg on the sly gets countered a lot by the messy blight using characters, the high offense characters, or people that can just simply coexist with blight. So all of your blight users, spoiler alert, like to really throw monkey wrenches into Habsburg's engine here. But this isn't the only adversary that has a thing which comes into effect once the player is doing good things.
Sure.
Russia hiding cards in the fear deck, like, come on. Like, the fear deck is something I like to go through.
I know. And they're like, here's another land we're building on.
Right.
Scotland, England, like, building adjacently is never fun. When you're like, oh, this land's empty. It's got a town now.
Right. It's one of those things where it feels like you can hardly ever get one up on the bad guys when they have perks that trigger whenever you do something, those counterattacking things. You're like, will you stop it? It can be so mentally deprecating, like,
I feel like for these guys, you really have to strategize your team. Maybe more so than other ones.
I remember.
You just gotta really we have to find all the blight people.
No, it's true. I remember when we played this the other day and the people we were playing with as well as me, after turn 1, we were like, wow, I don't like these guys.
Yeah, we were not a fan really early on.
Not a fan.
Uh-oh.
Really liked playing these people. Maybe because I just have such PTSD with that stupid Russia. But...
You know, it was a lot of fun to counter them with the specific spirits we did, but the poor player who was playing Lure and the other guy who was playing Green, they weren't doing so hot. And it was like, yeah, I can see their opinion when they say the words, I'm not feeling so great about this adversary. I'm like, I feel you, fam. I got you.
We turned it around.
Yep. I think we were able to do quite well. But let's get into what they do with their various levels. So, we described how their base difficulty starts at 2, which I believe is actually the highest for base difficulty, but I will check into that. Hey, editing Ryan, is that correct? I was wrong. France is also 2. Thanks, bro. Anyway, so at level 1, their difficulty goes from 2 to 3. They add another fear card to the deck, and they add it to stage 2. So you go from 3 across the board to 3, 4, 3. They acquire, at level 1, the perk Migratory Herders. After the normal build step, in each land that matches a build card, gather 1 town from a land that is not matching a build card. So this is one
like
of
their thing.
Yes.
One of their things.
And I've noticed a lot of nations' fundamental identity defining things are usually in the first few levels. And this would be it.
Oh yeah, Russia's Strong Explorers is on 1.
Yep, and then Explorers Staying Alive happens at stage 2.
Okay.
So
which makes sense, because if you're going to play against a specific adversary, you want to play against, like, the
Right.
essence of the adversary.
You want
and then
their-
build layers on top of that.
correct, you want that identity represented quickly at even the lower levels.
Yeah.
So, what this means is that they have moving towns. This is really interesting and very unfortunate for characters that want to set up stuff. Our Lure player had it quite hard because Lure is a character that can move people. Yes, they can move explorers and they can move towns.
They gather them in. They lure them to
Correct.
the wilderness.
And our player was able to do that. However, it's kind of hard when you perfectly pull people in and then those towns, I'm going to move right out of
Scoop
here.
right out, yeah.
So Lure's like, get over here. And then he's just like, all right, I'm going to head out. And so he just walks right back out of there.
Yeah, the explorer's like, I've seen this movie.
But then I set up Badlands into this land, and I set up other things over here. So mobile attackers are actually going to be pretty good here, because someone who can keep up with you, someone who can keep pace. Thunder Speaker comes to mind when I think about this. Sharp Fangs comes to mind when I usually think about this. However, the necessity for Blight is a hindering factor, but I'm speaking towards the mobile attacking thing. At least Sharp Fangs can keep up with these mobile towns. So that is something that can actually be a blessing and a curse, because if you are someone who can move, you don't mind. And if you are someone who is everywhere, like Mist, actually not so bad. Because you can be like, I'm everywhere. You going over there? I'm already over there. And even if I wasn't, okay, I'll follow you. Downpour is like, where you going, fam? Starlight's going, where you going, fam? Trickster, where you going, fam?
I need to think of Starlight more. Just, I'm talking to everyone in the room. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, Starlight does stuff and moves around and like
Starlight,
has an option.
there are
Starlight
like
is a thing.
Starlight's
10,
a thing.
12 different spirits all contained within Starlight.
Yeah.
So-
I just forget like Starlight can just move so easily.
Yep.
I need to play that spirit again.
One thing I always remind myself is just how good of a blight healer Starlight can be. With that 3 water elements, remove a blight.
Boom.
It's not
I
bad.
should have played Starlight.
That would have added an
Starlight is
interesting
a very
dynamic to the
fun
game.
character to play as.
Give it to Josh.
Anyway, so that is Migratory Herders. That is what makes them move. They get that at level 1.
Before we move on to the next one, I hated this because, spoilers, I played as River, and I would clear out a land, and then all of a sudden they would gather, matching the build card, into a land I just cleared out. So I'm like, oh, this land's cleared. They don't care. They gathered over there.
Right.
It was just such a pain for me to like try and keep things out as a control character.
Yeah.
I had to clear out an entire
This
land.
is a anti-control thing.
Yeah, it was
that
not
the bad
fun.
guys are using against
It
you.
reminded me a little bit of England, like, land's clear, doesn't matter, here's a town.
Will you stop it?
I know, it's so annoying.
When you clear a thing and then they're like, oh, can I come in? And, you know, in England's case, they have more health. And as we will describe here, they're like, will you stop it with your high health
I
building?
know, so much health. Sorry, next level.
Well, then at level 2, they go from difficulty 3 up to 5.
Ooh.
Fear cards, there's 11, 4, 5, and 2.
Now that's interesting.
Let's break this down.
Oh.
At first, at level 1, they were 3, 4, 3. But at level 2, they go to 4, 5, 2? Only 2.
So much emphasis on terror level 2 because they don't care about cities.
Right.
But
I
that's
find
so
that very
strange
interesting.
that there's only 2.
And it's the only level in this entire thing that does so, but I thought that was quite interesting.
It's almost like the designers or the game just assumes like you're not going to have trouble with cities.
Terror level 2 is going to be where the big mid-game fight
and
will
that's
take
where
place.
our fight was as well.
It did.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Then, our game effect is more rural than urban.
That was perfectly enunciated. Well done.
It was.
Thank you. I have theater training. During setup, on each board, add 1 town to land number 2 and 1 town to the highest numbered land without setup symbols. During play, when invaders would build 1 city in an inland land, they instead build 2 towns.
Me no likey this either.
So this one does 2 things. You start with more towns out there, so they just have more stuff. That's not the worst thing. But this is yet another pillar of their identity, which is their cities only exist on the coasts. But in the inland lands, they will have literally twice as many towns.
So you're thinking like, oh, maybe that's good. Like, cities are tough. They're
Yeah.
3 health. They do 3 damage. More towns isn't as bad. Nope.
Remember how when we were describing Russia, we said, you can see now how these indestructible explorers that do high damage are really annoying. And that's like their whole shtick. Well, you can quickly see that Habsburg's shtick is high health mobile towns, and there's a lot of them!
There's so many. They're multiplying, spreading.
It's like spiders.
It
Like
was
mortal engines where the cities are all come to life and just scurrying all over the stupid board as you're running after them with a flip-flop.
Who's gonna know a Mortal Engines reference? No one.
There are a lot of people.
We're talking to nerds.
There are dozens of us. Dozens.
Dozens, I
It
tell
was a
you.
movie!
No one watched it.
Well,
I heard that it wasn't like,
the book was conceptually fun.
Yeah, the
I
concept
heard the
sounds
book was
cool.
actually
Just too
pretty
much
good.
teenage angst.
Okay.
Anyway, I think that this also introduces a strategic entry here for characters that do damage to a lot of invaders as opposed to maybe single tough invaders, because now you have twice as many towns.
I instantly thought of Mist.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I think Mist does this, River does this. There are certain cards like Spill Bitterness into the Earth does this as well. Just cards or powers that allow you to do damage to multiple people
Mist of
will start to
Oblivion?
look a lot better. Mist of Oblivion would
With
be
the blob?
fantastic. Yes. Blobby Mist. He's so fat. I love him.
The first iteration of Mist.
He's so cute. He's so fat. I want to poke him. Boop, boop. Okay, anyway.
Level 3. It raises the difficulty to 6. So we went
Just
from
by 1.
Yeah, from 5 to 6.
Not bad.
Too bad. We're on to 12 fear cards. 4, 5, and then 3. So instead of 2, it boosts it up to 3.
Kind of gives you a longer game.
It does. I like the third one. Not for what it does. It's just a setup.
Yeah.
Because less rules to track. When making the invader deck, remove 1 additional stage 1 card. New deck order. 1, 1. 2, 2, 2, 2. And then all your 3s that you usually play with.
Yep, so it's just a standard invader deck, but they only have 2 stage 1 cards.
It's starting to feel
So-
like Brandenburg.
In a way, yeah, the game has 1 less turn in it, but more impactfully, they get to their stage 2 much quicker. And we already described their stage 2 escalation, but on turn 3, you're going to be getting that.
Yeah.
What this means is that you are simply going to get to that stage 2 escalation effect a lot faster than usual, because it's going to feel earlier, because it is. I know it's just 1 card, but that's an entire turn. And I remember when we were playing, we're like, oh, they're doing this already?
And some of us on turn 3 didn't have a whole lot of blight, so we
Ironically,
did have...
that only hurt 2 of us.
Well,
But we'll
for
get into that.
River, I had to have multiple towns added during the escalation.
But you had a really unique and fun way to deal with this problem. We'll get into that in 30 minutes. So level 4 is where they really kick it up, and this is where the barf starts to happen. So, first off, the difficulty increases by 2 from 6 to 8. They go to difficulty 8. They have the exact same amount of fear cards, just as before, so there are no more fear cards from this one. In that respect, that is good. However, they get probably one of the worst, as far as tools against the player, perks at level 4, and that is Herds thrive in verdant lands. Towns in lands without blight are durable. This means that they have +2 health, and destroy towns effects now do 2 damage instead per town they could normally destroy. Cards that say destroy all towns work normally.
Jungle Hungers!
Jungle Hungers! This is the big one, y'all. This is the one that has gotten probably Habsburg the most amount of notoriety.
Yeah.
This durable keyword, destroy towns, no longer works. There's a little bit of history behind this,
Lots
but
of history.
just from the onset, their towns now have more health than their cities, which is really ironic, seeing how their cities, there's not a whole lot of them, and they have twice as many towns, and those towns are even better than the cities.
Yeah, level 2 is getting more difficult. Really.
They get to feed into their own synergistic
Exactly.
ball of doom. Now, of course, cities still do 3 damage where towns only do 2 damage, so still, it's not like cities are 100% worse. I'm talking about the health here.
Can we go into the quick sidebar of England and everyone's cheat code that they...
That wasn't a sidebar. That was going to be my very next thing. But no, I was just explaining how it's interesting because now that towns have more health, at 4, this actually is more than cities, but if there is a blight there, they act like normal.
Yeah.
So in a blighted land, you don't have to worry about any of these new things to remember. If the land is blighting, the herds aren't so good anymore. Their herds, which are represented by towns, are super towns that have a lot of health. They're very healthy if the land is also healthy. Mm-hmm. This is what we were referring to when we described if the land is healthy, so are they. If the land is not healthy, neither are they. They cannot have their special towns if a blight is also in there. This is why blight users really like to take the pain to Habsburg, because you neuter Habsburg's super towns if the land is blighted.
This isn't the first time that we've had extra health on buildings, though.
Correct. And one thing was quite funny is England has extra health on their buildings, as you all know, with their towns having 3 health and their cities having 4 health, which is insane because now their towns have as much as a normal city, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But one loophole that was actually quite fun that we have described many times in the earlier episodes, especially with our second wave campaign, was the fun loophole of destroy.
Destroy. Love that
Destroy
word.
just says, boot, get off my board. It doesn't say technically, oh, I deal
but I have
this
4
much
health.
damage. If you have 4 health and it says destroy a city, boop. Destroy a city. I didn't do damage to you. I just blew you up. You can see the loophole. Well, because of this...
The powerhouse of Lightning, Ocean, Thunder Speaker is out the window.
Right.
Because they aren't blight users. I know
the
Thunder
design
Speaker's
team was
mobile.
like, oops. That actually wasn't intended, but you know what? We'll roll with it and make one of the next bad guys
This does
get
feel
around
like
this.
a walk back of like, all right, you guys had your fun with England, beating them up.
Well, they're nice about it, though. They still allow us to smack England.
Yeah. I mean, England is still tough. Don't worry.
England looking at all of these destroy effects still coming in. Oh, no!
Blimey!
They keep getting just shredded and destroyed. How
guys
come
sound Australian.
Habsburg...
Am I doing Australian?
They are quite similar, but how come Habsburg gets to have this cool new keyword when it was supposed to be ours to begin with?
I just see like Lightning walking up to be like the big guy on the block, and then Habsburg is just like, oh no.
Oh no.
I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of where the fun is.
Really?
Because
Why do you like these guys so much?
Because I'm used to being like, oh yeah, Ocean can just, kind of push everything. Because I actually brought that up. I'm like, what if we just pushed things into the ocean?
Well, it's fun to be challenged sometimes.
It is fun to be
Yeah,
challenged.
so
Ocean
kinda
can just
to
drown
think-
cities, typically.
Would Ocean still be able to drown the towns, or would they not?
Would they pop back out?
I remember someone asking that on the
I feel like this on
FAQ,
Yeah.
and I forget the answer. Yo, editing Ryan, do you mind coming in again?
Before I answer that question, it's good to know that if a blight enters a land, Habsburg's extra health for their towns is lost immediately. Therefore, if a durable Habsburg town was damaged so that just 1 or 2 health remained, and blight would enter that land, the wounded towns would die immediately with that blight's entry. As to the ocean inquiry, drowning is a special form of destroy, so it works just like a destroy effect. In accordance with Habsburg's level 4 ability, destroy effects would now only deal 2 damage to towns only, per town moved into the ocean. It only grants energy for the invaders successfully destroyed by that destroy instruction. After you move a town into an ocean, the town takes 2 damage. If the town was previously damaged with 2 or less health remaining, or if the ocean was blighted, then it drowns normally. If it was at full health, and the ocean was not blighted, it would take 2 damage. Then, you would push it into a non-ocean land. If that land it went into has a blight, it will die immediately and be destroyed. But Ocean's Hungry Grasp will not gain energy. If 4 undamaged towns are pushed into the ocean with a single action, the player will be able to deal 8 damage to towns only, which you could distribute as you wished. If you used it to immediately destroy 2 of those towns, the towns would successfully be drowned and would grant energy. There is your answer. Laura will make a comment in 7 seconds. Feel free to ignore it. Additionally, I will return in 11 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thanks again, fam.
I hated your answer, I think, Ryan.
No, go on what you're saying this about, because you like playing Ocean.
I like playing Ocean. I like playing Thunder Speaker. I like being adjacent to Lightning and not playing it. But it's nice to kind of have to think outside the box and go, we're going against a powerful adversary, and I can't use my mains or whatever. Who do I have to like do?
Yeah, you have to
Big
come at it with a new
offensive
angle.
people.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into this, but I've never seen
Wildfire?
like looks so good before. It was really neat.
It's
Anyways.
great. Anyway, so that's what level 4 does.
Level 5 just brings us up to a 9. We get 13 fear cards, 4 6/3s. They're adding another one in the
They
middle.
added another one to the middle,
Stage.
further cementing this whole your fight will be in the mid game.
Just against the towns.
And we felt
Just
it.
fighting the town.
Oh, yeah.
That was a slog.
You can feel it, guys. Trust me. All of you out there, you'll feel it. You're
You'll
like,
just get stuck
how
there.
long have we been in terror level 2?
In eternity.
long. So this is called Wave of Immigration. Before the initial explore, put the Habsburg Reminder card under the top 5 invader cards.
Not this again.
When revealed on each board, add 1 city to a coastal land without cities, and 1 town to the 3 inland lands with the fewest blight.
Oh,
Will
nice.
you stop it?
More towns, more cities.
So
and
they
where
just
they are
go
most powerful.
and spam their buildings again. But here, they put their own bomb in their own deck.
Again, I do like a rule like this you don't have to keep track of. You just put it in the deck, and then once it comes up, you're like, oh yeah, the reminder.
I do like when an adversary has one of their levels, something like this, and we described that too in past episodes, where it's not something you have to remember every single turn from turn to turn to turn to turn to turn. It's like, what was that thing again? Oh, that was just a setup thing. Okay, that's just one less thing to remember. I actually dig that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I think
One
it's...
less thing to worry about. One less thing to
Don't
worry about.
What is happening? So yeah, adding more cities to a coastal land and more buildings to the inland land. 3 towns. Ugh.
To the fewest blade, like
Right.
Laura said.
This is
where
going to
they're
be a nasty
strongest.
combo if you do the Habsburg Scotland combo, because then you have Habsburg adding more cities for free
I'm sorry.
onto the
Wait,
coast.
you can play more than one person at a time?
I still can't wrap my head around it. Someone has been on the Discord.
Yeah, there are some combinations of nations that you can fight simultaneously, and some of them make more ugly pairs than others. So, for instance, England and Sweden can be a really ugly combo because their buildings have both bonus damage and bonus health. So, how about a city that has 4 health and 5 damage, and towns that have 3 health, 3 damage?
Yeah.
So it's like, ugh. Anyway, one
Quick
such...
sidebar. Hang on. While you're talking about the double adversaries, I wonder what's more difficult, because we all know France, maybe we all don't know, but France has lost condition if you have so many towns on the board.
Right.
You lose. I wonder if France Habsburg is extremely, almost insta-lose really quickly because of the multiplying towns.
Right, there's just so many. They're
There's just
multiplying
so many,
fast,
and France
right?
is like, you can have only so many towns on the board.
Ooh,
What's,
that's a good point.
what's the magic word?
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
want to do double adversaries, not anytime soon.
But to those who don't know, Scotland has a lose condition where they can win if they get enough cities specifically on the coast. But this wave of immigration says that you just straight up add a city to a coastal land without one. So it's like, ugh.
And this is tough too, because even if you are playing like Downpour or Finder who use isolation, they don't care. It just says add, doesn't say anything adjacent or nothing. So that stinks.
As for what this does for taking on Habsburg alone, this actually isn't the worst because it just does more of the same.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because look at their escalation effect. Oh, just add more towns. Look at some of the setup thing. Yeah, just add more buildings. Oh, they just add more buildings, and here they're just adding more buildings. They got a lot of buildings, y'all.
Yeah, get used to it.
Right.
Last
Ugh.
one, level 6. Now we're at 10. The even 10. We're up to 14 fear cards. 5, 6, 3.
So the early and mid game is where you will have your fight. But your end game was actually going to be undeterred.
Last one, far-flung herds. Ravages do +2 damage. Remember the additional loss condition if they do 8 damage in lands. Ravages do +2 damage total if any adjacent lands have towns. Wait, aren't there already a ton of towns?
How many adjacent lands do you think have towns? That's right, all of them.
Oh,
This
my
does not
goodness.
cause lands without invaders to ravage, which
So
is a nice thing.
this is a mobile adversary that spawns a ton of buildings, yet if they do a lot of damage to you, they win, and they get extra damage in lands that they're not even in if those lands happen to have any towns.
Yeah, and easily triggering that loss condition.
Which is going to be ridiculously easy. So this enters the strategic value with level 6 of having a isolationist character. Downpour, Finder.
My Finder game was against Habsburg, and I played Finder, Volcano, and usually you're using isolation to prevent explorers, right? You don't want explorers to happen.
Right.
It's basically like a wild
to
token.
negate the adjacency.
I was never using my isolation for explorers because I didn't want the extra damage during a ravage. I was always doing it on a ravaging or
Now,
a
this
building.
is actually something that's quite nice in a way, because when you are using a isolation effect to isolate a land, it's usually to stop exploring. Well, if you intend to use isolation to stop and explore, you don't know where they're going to explore.
It's a gamble.
So, a lot of the times it's a gamble. Now, I know that you can isolate the ocean if Mr. Ocean's Hungry Grasp is in play. I get that, and so it can be useful there. Or if you have a land that has just one building in it, and all of the adjacent lands are clear, you might want to isolate that one.
So nothing comes from
nothing
it.
comes from it.
Yeah.
That's true. But if you know where they are going to ravage, because it says ravages 2+2 damage if any adjacent lands have a town. Well, guess what's face up? The ravage card.
Yeah.
So you can be like, no! And you can be like, immediate cancel to Far-Flung Herds. You can immediately cancel it. And you don't have to be random guessy with where this is going to happen.
Good point,
Luckily, with characters that have isolation, you can be like, no, I'm going to just rain right here. I'm going to, throw so much downpour rain right here. If you're playing as that character, for instance, or Finder like we mentioned, because it is like face-up card. The Explorer card is face down. Anyway, but this one's face up, so that actually is quite helpful. But to those who don't have an isolationist friend, this sucks.
Yikes.
This sucks. Once again, the don't care spirits, Resilience, Earth, and Stone, are starting to shine a bit brighter here because you're looking at all this extra damage. Well, who likes extra damage? People that have insanely high health, or people that have insane abilities that keep them alive even if a blight comes in, because you're probably gonna come in. One thing that's very helpful with Stone specifically is, I'm sorry, did that Ravage deal bonus damage? I'm sorry, who can reflect your damage back at you? Ha ha!
Ooh,
Stone.
Lore will get into that.
So this is the rule set of Habsburg Monarchy. This is pretty ugly, guys. So they like a clean and tidy board, yet you'll notice that they don't add extra blight with their really high damage attacks like Sweden does. Sweden really populates the filth.
Yeah.
These guys don't really do that so much. All you have to do is track how many times they hit you hard. They don't really care about dirting up the land because they actually kind of want a clean land.
I'm seeing Earth become more and more strong because of there's Guard the Healing Land where you can defend, Resilience Earth we've already talked about, and then the Year of Perfect Stillness where you can just prevent anything from happening. Like a Ravage. Earth is becoming more and more strong in my mind against Habsburg.
So, let's get into the game that we had.
What a
against
fun
Habsburg.
game.
It was a lot of fun. We actually don't really have a lot of 4+ player games, but this time we did. We had a 5-player game, and it was a lot of fun, and our team composition was quite interesting. For low, I think we had spirits from every range in the spectrum.
Oh.
Characters that are, not so good against this adversary, while others we were like, pretty good, and others that were just
Counterpick.
perfect. Absolutely perfect. So, it was us 3 that were in this game, in addition to Josh, you remember him.
Shout out to Josh!
Josh! As well as another friend who was able to join us for that day, and it was a lot of fun.
Yay, other friend.
Yay! And so, we were able to win, but with some difficulty.
Much.
And at what cost?
Hey, we quoted that last time. Our team composition, I was Heart of the Wildfire.
I was River, Surges, and Sunlight.
I was Stone.
Josh was Green, and our friend Bob was Lure.
Lure of the Deep Wilderness.
So we had an interesting start because for the first few turns...
Wait a minute, interesting. You put it so nicely. It was a bad start.
Well...
It was off to a garbage
if you
start.
let me finish
Right out the bat.
Right.
If you let me finish my sentence, it was interesting because pretty much everyone was having it pretty hard, and then I'm sitting there having a bloodbath.
You were destroying so much.
Oh my goodness, Wildfire was fantastic, y'all. Oh my goodness, Wildfire was just absolutely shredding
Burning.
Habsburg. It was
out of the
fantastic.
gate, death and destruction.
It was great. One of the reasons why Wildfire was so good for us was because Wildfire likes to just go and be like, yo, what up, world? And just bounce around the map. Remember how we were talking about how Habsburg was annoying because they're constantly moving around, and so mobile peeps are actually quite good? Well, here's an example of said thing. Wildfire was absolutely fantastic because they can move around. I'm sorry, did your towns go over there? Get over here, fam! Keep jumping around, you're going over there? So am I! Going over here, get back here! And so I felt very much like Scorpion. I'm just a fire demon who's like, get over here! So whenever they went to a spot, I'm like, all right, two can play at that game, sonny. Another thing, though, that was so great is that Wildfire just adds so much blight and just
weakening
carpets,
those towns.
Right, just sets the dance floor with all of this blight, and then they just waltz all over
We
the
have
place.
extra health, but Wildfire's like, nope.
No, you don't. Now, one thing that was quite interesting was if you notice with Blazing Presence with Wildfire's special rule, it says when you add or move presence after setup in the land that it goes to for each exposed fire element on your track, do 1 damage. Then, after that, you add the blight. So some people I have heard say, well, wait, that's not so good for Wildfire because you can't add the blight and then do damage. It's you do the damage first, then you do the blight. Well, one thing that is great is I would do this fun thing where I would disperse my damage to 3 different towns. They all had 4 health, but I'm like, all right, take 1 health off. You've taken 1 damage. Now a blight enters. They're still wounded. They took 1 damage. Now they have 2 health. 1 damage is half of it. They have 1 health left. So guess what happens in the immediately following firestorm that happens in the fast phase? I have like 3 wounded towns and
Burn, baby.
just burning all of them.
I told you I would return. Technically, there was nothing wrong with how I was playing with Wildfire, but with what I spoke of earlier with Ocean, and how a Habsburg town will lose its bonus health as soon as a blight enters, this means that it is inconsequential if the blight comes in after the damage. So, I could have made the whole process easier for myself by entering a land, hitting the towns for 2 damage, and then they'd die immediately when that blight would enter. So there's nothing strictly wrong here, but I'm just pointing out another way you could play it.
And also, there is just simply blight all over the place. So, one thing that was just so great was we talked about their escalation effect and how if your land is clean, they can get more buildings out there. Well, guess what? Since I carpeted the land with blight on my personal board, they never once did their escalation on my board, which is what I was referring to when I said there were only 2 of us, usually I think it was 3 the first time, but there were 2 of us that were completely exempt from their stage 2 escalation.
It happened to me every time.
I was one of those people because I had a ton of blight to begin with, and poor Lure was just simply taking a lot of hits, so that's why they didn't have that. But
Lure
that's
is slow
fine
start.
because Lure is a slower spirit, and they were coming out of the gate, and Wildfire was just, in our early game, it was hilarious, because everyone was like, oh geez, and I'm sitting there just like, come on, man! I felt like Gimli at Helm's Deep, like, oh yeah, we can take him! And so everyone else is just like, hold them back! And I'm like, 20! 21! 22! I was slaughtering people. Oh, it was fantastic.
And Josh was just whipping Gift of Proliferation at you, like, hey, Ryan, you want to grow again? You're
Let's
like,
do
yes,
it.
please,
Yes. And so I kept
Well,
just-
you and Laura, I never got Gift of Proliferation. I'm still bitter.
Some of us were a little more necessary.
Well, Stone and Wildfire were like the Jaeger to this tank, so
I did massive flooding a couple times.
that was actually pretty sweet, not gonna lie. But one thing that was hilarious was in the early game, John once spoke a few minutes ago about how he would move towns, but then they would move them right back. And so you're like, just stop it! Because it's hard for a controller to move people, and then they just move on their own. Like, stop it. I put you here. Just stay where I put you. And so it was hilarious because there were 5 towns in the early game. You're just like, here, Ryan, take them. I'm just gonna send them to you. I'm just gonna just shove these towns into your territory. I'm like, that's fine. Just put them on the Bunsen burner. All of my lands that had a presence and a blight is just like a Bunsen burner. And to all the new players out there, if you're unfamiliar with how Heart of the Wildfire works, Heart of the Wildfire will move to a land and bounce around the place, and they will set up a presence and a blight in a land. But Wildfire has an innate power called Firestorm, which will allow you to deal damage in any land where you have a presence and where there's also a blight. So I like to think of it like Wildfire is going around the land, installing Bunsen burners in various lands, and can turn on that Bunsen burner to and just bake any bad guy that goes there. So one thing is fun is not only can you move to new lands, setting them ablaze, but all the lands that you just were at, you can set ablaze again. So it was hilarious because Wildfire's starting land starts with 3 presence and 2 blight. So that is definitely a place that is on fire!
Oh, it was nice because our boards were
you
next
and
to
I
each
were
other.
adjacent to each other,
We
and
were
my
adjacent.
starting land was adjacent to your board.
And I was pushing. I used Wash Away so many times. That's where you can push 3 explorers / towns. Guess what? I wasn't really often choosing explorers. I was choosing 3 towns as much as I could. I pushed them on so that you're right, your starting location. And you would just set them ablaze.
And one thing that was so fantastic was the card Asphyxiating Smoke. And usually it wouldn't be able to deal with these towns because it says destroy a town. And at Habsburg level 4, you can't destroy them if they are in an unblighted land. But guess what? A lot of the times they would build in a land that I had been in many turns ago, and so they would gather a town into that blighted land. And so I would just do Asphyxiating Smoke to just, boop, got him. It was one of those hilarious things.
Is that at range 2?
It is. It's Heart of the Wildfire's longest ranged thing.
It reminds me of Shattered Homesteads, where you get like a fear for the card and then destroy a town.
Yep.
And then Lightning has that.
Honestly, it felt like one of those moments where the character walks away from the explosion without looking at it, because it's like, I burn a land, I blew everything up, cool. Oh wait, there's another bad guy that just entered. Oh, the bad guy trains a gun on the back of the hero's head, and the hero doesn't see it, and the hero's like walking away. And then there's like a perfectly positioned, timed explosive that's that like gets a one guy like, I planned for that. So there's a lot of times when you can jump in a land, bounce elsewhere, someone comes into a land you were at, and then you can just alley-oop and throw the basketball of Asphyxiating Smoke behind you and get them because there's a blight there.
Now, Ryan, I'm going to have to call you out. You played Flame's Fury, never on me. And I'm grumpy.
Do you blame me?
Why can't I have extra damage?
I needed the bonus damage.
I have Flash Floods and only does 1 damage unless it's
my
in the
neck,
coast.
my spine. I was in so much pain from carrying the team.
Oh
for
my
so
goodness.
long.
Okay, Laura, start talking about Stone.
For the early and mid game.
Okay, Laura, what'd you do with Stone?
Well, Stone got off to a slow start.
Okay.
Stone is very uniquely equipped, though, to counter a lot of the bad perks that Habsburg has, especially that loss condition, because of the whole coming from the box and back to the box thing. We described that earlier, and that's just one thing that just Stone being there automatically helps with.
Let me rephrase that. Laura got off to a slow start.
We also described the fact that the damage reflect that goes right back to them is actually really nice, because like, look at all these towns, look at this bonus damage we can get. And you're like,
Yeah,
no,
there was,
you.
you had a pretty big turn with that.
Well, as I was saying, I got off to a slow start.
Okay.
But I was going to get there because it was like trying to get myself set up and whatnot. You know when you're like used to playing some of the slightly easier spirits and then you get a moderate one from Jagged Earth and it's got like all the things and the symbols and
Right.
you're like, wait.
Lots of reading to do in the Jagged Earth
I
one.
gotta
A
stare
Jagged
at this
Earth
again.
moderate is not the same as a base game moderate.
Yeah.
No, but it is delightful once you get going. I don't remember a whole lot about the beginning game other than being one of the people standing there like, oh boy.
We were all saying, oh, boy,
Luckily, I was
Really?
also in the middle of the board, the way it was physically oriented, because there were a lot. I was adjacent to Lure's board and River's board, and so there were a lot of bad guys.
The most people, well,
Right.
River. I was next to River and then like shared one little teeny tiny point of intersection with Green, which did end up helping. We got some good synergy going there in a little bit, but it really did become a mid to late game when I was able to get into Josh's board as Green, and he was able to gift a proliferation me right where we needed to be, so I could defend for him and like keep the land from blighting. And then once I was able to trigger Let Them Break Themselves against Stone, and I was able to trigger it especially at its highest level. In the last couple of turns, I was triggering that highest level every single time. So we would just kind of like group up the towns and then just smash them all to bits, which was so fun to do.
One quick combo that me and Laura had. Stone's got this one card.
Stubborn Solidity?
Oh, I played Stubborn Solidity like every single turn.
You did often.
That you could, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I like we said with the positioning, I was next to Ryan, but I was also next to Laura, and I started growing the river towards Laura, and I did River's bounty.
Yeah.
So I would be making more to Han. I can't do anything with them because River can't defend naturally, but Laura would take them and solidify them, and they would fight back. It was like, these combos are really cool.
It really was. And also that plows shatter on rocky ground, where you do 1 damage to each town, push up to 1 town, or destroy a town. I was able to work that with Josh. He had a 1 damage to each town in a...
I don't know, what's that one?
Stem the fresh flow of water,
That
which
was
if
it.
the land is a specific type...
Mountain or sand.
Yes.
We were able to
Yeah.
combo
If it's a
those
mountain or
together
sand.
because we would let the Lord blight, and then we would both be in there. And the mountains and the sands we were able to clean up together in one round.
Man, green is so good. I keep
know.
forgetting green has 1 damage to each building if it's
Yep.
in the right land.
And it's in a mountain or sand.
And it's
Yeah.
green's weak lands. It's just like, wow, what a good spirit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just keep seeing the spirit. I'm like,
Yep.
there's no faults.
The problem with poor Green in this game was the whole, like, I'm defending a lot of places, and he was doing so good with defending, and yet the creepers tear into mortar in 8 power isn't looking so great because they have so much health on those buildings.
Yeah.
And then the whole fact that they need to blight in order to be weak, but he was defending so well that it was actually hurting us.
It was.
Because we actually want them to be blighted.
It's a weird adversary.
Yeah,
It
definitely
is.
flips the script there.
And I think that's where I felt like the most strength from Stone was that I never was worried about blight as long as I
Yeah.
was there and I had a little bit of money, because I was able to trigger that, almost right off the
But we
bat,
did
pretty much
blight.
right off the bat.
I'll have you know that from turn 3 onwards for the rest of the game, every single turn, I removed a blight. I was a very responsible wildfire.
I picked up Uncanny Melting, which is the target land is sands or wetland, remove a blight. So River was also trying to help out,
Yep.
but we did blight.
So we did have a few
corruption. And I did it once.
Nice.
We did have a few nasty events which are just, hey, blight. Like, wait, can we stop it? No.
Nope.
You just blight.
Some of us at the table threw a fit.
So while we're discussing...
Some of us at the table also kept other of us alive, and we're very grateful for that, so...
Oh, I meant I threw a fit, but you did too.
No, I know, I'm just saying you kept us alive
No,
through a lot
you
of
kept
those...
us alive.
Oh.
I'm giving you a compliment, take it, darn it!
What is this?
I never get these.
Can I speak?
No.
All right, so we did blight. I want to talk about wildfire and blight cards. I think me and Ryan had spoke when we did our blight episode when the blight rule changes on how certain spirits got buffed with having the extra
yes.
blight on the cards. I also think because of France and Jagged Earth, we have now more blight cards. I've told Ryan this, but I've like sending a screenshot. I'm trying to play wildfire a little bit more, but I still blight, and those 2 blight cards are the worst. And I'm always either losing presence or losing a card and a presence, or I get to pick.
Yep.
Because we're going to go into this. We got a good or good-ish blight card.
Yeah.
And that helped where,
Very much so.
especially with
It
wild...
wasn't an ongoing effect.
It was an ongoing effect.
Thank
and so
goodness.
I'm kind of more okay with wildfire on my team because I know like maybe it's not going to be the worst.
It
Right.
might be a still healthy island card.
It might be a still healthy island card.
I
It might
have yet
be...
to get
I
one of
love
those.
It might be Aid from Lesser Spirits. It might be
Back against the wall.
Back Against the Wall. Or we got...
Erosion of Will.
Right, that's just the one that says you get 2 fear per player, and every spirit destroys one of their presence and loses an energy. Luckily, like we said, this is one that gives and takes, but more importantly, whatever it does only happens once.
Wasn't an ongoing effect.
And that's huge. That's really, really nice.
Do you think that does help Wildfire with having more blight options?
Oh,
blight
goodness,
cards?
yeah.
I think
Oh, yeah.
just like I want Wildfire on my team more than maybe even like Thunder Spirit or
I
Lightning.
love Wildfire.
It just seeing what you did and how you were able just to burn them alive. Your board got relatively clean.
You know, it was
pretty-
really good because Wildfire was, all jokes aside, was doing such a help to the team in the early and mid game,
Yeah.
which gave enough time for everyone else to get to their late game. And Stone in
So
the late
true.
game can be terrifying.
You were terrifying, Laura.
River in the late game can be scary. Lure in the late game can be terrifying. And so one thing that was kind of interesting was I was running out of targets to burn. And so my late game started to look more and more lackluster the longer the game went on.
Which
whereas
turn-
everyone else's was starting to look better and better as the game went on.
Which turn was it that your board was like clear?
It was like 5 or 6.
It was pretty early.
So it seems difficult to like, how does it get like that? But their explorers don't have extra health. So Ryan was stopping a lot of them at
Oh my
the
goodness.
source.
Flash Fires was fantastic. And one thing that was really helpful was it did grab Drift Down into Slumber, which has air, earth, and plant on it, which are elements that fire really likes in addition to fire. But Flash Fires, that card likes air because if you have 2 air, you can make that slow power into a fast one. And since it does has 1 fear, 1 damage, you can go and pink, pick off an explorer, which is very nice. And of course, if you have Flame's Fury on yourself, you can take out a town, which is also really great. But there's a lot of flexibility just between
and you
that
often
card
had
as well.
wind, I feel. So you were making it fast quite a bit.
Yep, and later in the game, we were able to get an element of our
talk
choice.
about it!
We actually had
Mr.
an
I
event.
hate events.
This was delightful.
This was a game that further incentivized me to not play with events because
Ryan!
they screwed us over again.
We won because of this event, I swear. I think so.
No,
I
I'm
liked
shaking my
Moria
head
more
no.
because of this event.
We were 2
So,
turns
yeah,
away from
Josh,
losing.
Bob, and myself were like, yeah, I like events even less after this game. It is true that they can help you, but
this one helped a lot.
But this wasn't nearly as good as the Russia game we had. If I had
That's true.
events work for me like they did in that Russia game, I would play with events all the time. But they
However-
don't do that, John.
It's random, Ryan.
You do realize we had to destroy more presents to get this effect. Anyway, this was just simply the event called Lesser Spirits Get Imperiled, which is based on player actions. You are allowed to gain 1 permanent element of your choice for the rest of the game, which is really nice. And that was a genuine nice thing. The unfortunate thing is there were a lot of extra lands that blighted and a lot of plans that got thwarted by poor Bob and Josh because they laid a very specific plan for their lands, and the event was like, no. And I had a lot like that too. I'm like, great, this land's gonna blight because of this.
Sometimes life hits you hard.
I know, and I don't know why you defend events so much because they
because
suck.
of this.
It's not worth it.
It was a close game. We only had 2 turns left in the invader deck.
Yeah, it was rough. But
It was close.
the reason why, and I know some of you out there are like, wait, if you were mad that a land was going to blight and you're playing as Wildfire? Well, yeah, because if I blight this now blighted land, it's going to cascade, so now there's 2 blight, and my friends can't deal with that.
There was
so it's
some-
hard
There
to...
was quite a bit of cascading.
Yeah, I was about to say,
going on
we
in
had some, like,
places.
connect the dots going
It
with
is
the cascades.
difficult to be a responsible Wildfire when there is blight coming in that I did not calculate
It's not your
for.
fault, right.
Right. When I am predicting certain blight to come in, it's a lot better because I also have in my plan to get rid of this blight over here on the very same turn. So I put 1 on the board, but I also got rid of 1. So it's like a net gain of nothing. Like it washes out.
It's like when you have a budget and then your husband goes on eBay and buys tennis shoes. You know?
Or promo pack 2. I had to have it. I had to have it. I love me some Finder.
Anyway, but Drift Down into Slumber was nice because it was able to get me that air element for Flash Fires to trigger a lot easier, a lot more often with its
I
threshold.
liked your build of Wildfire.
Yeah, I think it was pretty good. Like I said, it was really strange because my early and mid game was so productive, and my late game was starting to be like, anybody left? Like, there's no one left to kill because all the bad guys are also dwelling where my friends are. And I don't
You
want
had to spread out more.
Right, and I don't want to jump on a land where my friend is. One of the things I once said, someone was like, guys, I have like a really big problem spot over here. Can anyone help me? And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I have a really big package deal. I can kill everyone on that spot, but my price is high. I also have to kill you as well.
It's
So,
worth it. Or
so-
it was out of range.
right.
And that's where John came in.
Yeah. But it was just like one of those things where it's just like Wildfire really excels on killing a lot of people in the same lands. So if you have bad guys popping up in the same spot, he is such a great weed whacker. Oh no, quickly spawning bad guys over here and over here. They're multiplying like rabbits. Oh, that's where Wildfire just
A
absolutely
good
excels.
range 0 spirit.
Because, yes, very much so. A very good range 0 spirit. Because you are placing your fire everywhere on one board a lot of the time. The basic and best strategy for Wildfire on the sly is just carve out your own area, carve out your dance floor, and just stay in that spot. Everyone who is in or on your dance floor will just get roasted.
Oh, yeah.
Literally. They cannot survive with
But
Wildfire.
then you start
bouncing
looking around, like you said, and there's no one around you because they're all gone.
But Wildfire doesn't do so good on enemies that are at range. Because although it's true that you can go yoink and just bounce like Tigger and bounce over there and set them all ablaze.
Tops are made of rubber. My mom's made of springs.
The problem is that other lands are also where your friends are. And Wildfire doesn't coexist well with very many people.
Except Stone.
Except
Yay!
Stone.
There was one time where Green and Stone were on a land. I'm like, hey, I can actually show up here. What up, world? And just like, pow, and kill a bunch of people. And Green stayed alive, and Stone stayed alive. And that was an exception to the rule. That was very fun.
And this game, though, I was across the board from you. So, like, we weren't able to synergize.
Right, it was only at the very
well.
end where we did the thing I just described.
Yeah.
One thing that was quite well, though, for me was we talked about the fact that they are gathering towns. This was perfect because they're building in lands on my board that are already on fire. Sure, sure, if you want to settle here.
And I was help pushing things into you.
It was just hilarious because like we're gonna come back to this land that we were at. I'm like, your funeral.
Okay.
Smells like steak. You know, all these herds are just on fire. Which, by the way, that is an accidental boon for Volcano as well. I'm sorry, are you gathering more people into one spot? That's a shame because I can just nuke one spot.
Yeah. Ooh, that's like the one thing I'm good at. Since Bob's not here, one of the players, I wanted to bring up a card that he drafted, Savage Transformation.
Yes.
It was very good because he was able to get more beast tokens that makes Lure stronger, and also, like you were saying, stopping the explorers at the source. Yeah, just getting rid of explorers, getting more beasts out there, and then he was able to do that on adjacent land when he triggered the effect.
Because Lure has to set up all these tokens in order to do damage. So Savage Transformation was allowing him to get beast tokens in lands where the bad guys moved to. So he was able to do damage on lands that he had set up for, because in the slow phase he went and made some people into beasts where bad guys moved, and then he was able to use one of his growth options to get into a land and then use his fast Swallowed by the Wilderness power to quickly do damage for every wilds token, beast token, badlands token, but namely beast in this instance. So he was able to more flexibly and more reliably get beast tokens out there.
It was kind of cool thematically, like he's luring these people, these explorers in, and they're turning into werewolves.
Right, and then immediately attacking them with it.
And then, using them
cool.
against themselves. And then Josh picked up Focus on the Land's Anguish. It's a new card, new major.
This one's actually really good for our situation in this one. I don't think I actually have ever used this card.
What happens in this one?
It's a slow. It's cost 5, and it has 1 sun. It's so weird that it has 1 element. If this power destroys any building, town, or city, 5 fear. Gather up to 5 blight and 1 damage per blight. And if you have 3 sun, plus 1 damage per blight.
So this is one of those cards that simply does more damage if there's more blight out there.
What is Habsburg?
And we were benefiting from a gameplay style of spitting blight everywhere. And a lot of that blight on his board was on accident, unfortunately. But we were quite happy to use that blight for Team Good Guy, and we were able to do a ton of damage. Now, ironically, although the damage was quite nice, in my opinion, the greatest boon that this card gave was the 5 fear that it was giving, because we were talking about just a ridiculous slog through Terror level 2 that we were going through. Oh my goodness. And with 5 players, it takes 20 fear.
Just to earn 1 card.
So you're not killing cities, so you're not getting 2 fear.
It was taking forever.
At one time, Ryan asked me, how many fear cards are we from Terror level 3?
Right.
I said we're 3 cards away, so we're 60 fear away. And we were 2 turns.
And we didn't have a fear spirit either. Now, it's true that I was gaining us a ton of fear, but...
Correction, you were gaining us the only fear in the early game.
But there's an asterisk with that, because it wasn't that I was doing good fear, it's I was just killing people. Yet I wasn't killing nearly enough to get all that fear that we needed, because as Laura stated, we're killing towns. Towns don't give you a whole lot of fear in comparison to cities, but there weren't really a lot of cities there. It was only towns.
And they're harder to kill for a lot of the other players.
Right. Oh my goodness, I killed so many people this game.
You did.
It was insane. I don't think I've ever seen Wildfire kill this many people, nor have I ever actually used a fully leveled up Firestorm innate.
Get into
Let's talk about that one.
This was the
It ended
the
game.
It was the last action that ended the game. And yes, we checked the action tree, but it was the actually last thing. Firestorm has 4 levels, and ironically, levels 1 and 2 require plant, and the third one uses fire and air, but it's at levels 3 and 4 where Firestorm really kicks up the awesomeness. The first level is where you simply get to do damage in a land that you are in based on how many fire elements you have. Then level 2 lets you do the same thing, but at a better rate. But level 3 and 4 are where it starts to get pretty hard, because Wildfire only gets up to 4 card play. And there's no growth option that can boost that.
Net a 5th or something.
Right, or something like that that can help assist with this. So what level 3 does is all the damage that you're doing with this innate, you can split this power's damage among any number of lands of yours that have both a blight and a presence. This is what I meant by the whole Bunsen burner thing. Throughout the game, you are installing so many Bunsen burners, and with this power, you can attack many lands. There was a time where I attacked 4 lands for 1 damage
Splitting
each,
the damage.
because there were 4 explorers that showed up. So it was like 1 innate power did damage in 4 different lands. It was fantastic. This is what I was referring to when I described that Wildfire is just ace at keeping one area locked down. Very good at keeping with one area and keeping it clear. Not so great with going out to other areas and sweeping across the board. That's more Mist's thing. But keeping one area completely clear, this is the ability that lets you do it. However, the thing that is insane, I feel as if people overlook Wildfire because they forget about this amazing innate when it's fully upgraded with Firestorm. This, even in my opinion, rivals some serpent cheese, which is, if you have enough to get it, it's just 7 fire, but in a land that has Blight and has your presence, you push all Dahan and you destroy all invaders and all beasts. But you destroy all invaders. Yep. All of them. They could literally have 1,000 million cities. Literally. And they could be even English cities. 1,000 million English cities. Boop! All gone. Not that you'll ever get to that ridiculously stupid number, but point being, this is a land wipe.
Yeah.
And so we had a land with a ton of people. It was on Lore's board. And so it was kind of like a great way to end the show with a bang with some fireworks, because I started the game and the mid-game was sustained by Wildfire setting things ablaze. And then to finish the game, it happened to be coincidentally last. I was able to get Firestorm and we were able to destroy what is like 3 explorers and 7 towns.
It was a bunch of towns.
It wasn't like the biggest congregation of bad guys you've seen, but there was enough plastic on that land where it was starting to overfill.
One of the rare Terror level 2 victories I've had, with only explorers left on the board.
Yeah, this was a Terror 2 victory. I don't think with Habsburg you are going to have a Terror level 3 victory too common or a Fear victory all that common, unless it is a lower player count game that isn't 5 like we had, and you had at least a few Fear Spirits.
Right.
With our setup, we had Green, Lure, Wildfire, River, Stone. There are no Fear Spirits to be found that day. There was no hope of us getting a Fear victory.
I counted the first time I generated a Fear was not until turn 4. I did Massive Flooding.
Yeah, and that was great. There were 2 occasions I can remember where there was a blighted land that had, what, like 10, 13 towns on it?
So I was accumulating all these towns into my one city, my coastal city, and I was pushing everything there, and then I let it blight. So yes, it did count everyone keeping track at home as one of our additional loss conditions. It went onto the card because it was
only one time though.
It happened only once.
I'm actually quite impressed with us, guys.
Yeah, it was only one time. It was because of me, but in the slow phase, because Massive Flooding is slow phase, I wiped everything out because I attacked that city in the fast with Flash Floods.
And it was quite satisfying because seeing how there are so many towns out there, there are so many bad guys, and they all have been cooped up because of River's fantastic control. There's all these bad guys in one spot, and guess what? They're all towns.
Yeah.
There's no cities in the inland. They're all towns, so 2 damage to every invader is just a kapow.
Oh, God.
All gone. It was absolutely fantastic and very satisfying because, honestly, John, between you and I think you and I had the highest kill count in that game.
Ooh, Laura's doing a face.
There were a lot of really cool maneuvers and really awesome high damage things that other players did. I'm talking about grand total. I don't think anyone overtook my kill count.
Oh, no one took
not
you.
Yours.
Laura,
I have a debate about River versus Stone.
Okay. I will say that getting that water element for lesser...
very helpful.
Helped me get Massive Flooding.
I
triggered it like almost every other trigger.
Ironically, I actually picked Air for that one because I wanted Flash Fires to trigger reliably and I wanted Firestorm level 3 to trigger reliably, and those are the only things that require Air. You may think, why would you pick Air
and not Fire
for Wildfire? I just simply had a lot of cards that gave me the Fire element, and my tracks were giving me 4 Fire elements as well, so I thought I was doing pretty good there.
Laura, you did the same thing. You didn't pick Stone.
You picked Sun, yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Stone only has a single innate that uses Sun.
But we were far enough along in the game where I was already triggering the 2nd level of it, let them break themselves against the stone, and I was getting so much mountain.
To be fair, you have a ton of earth elements on
your
track.
I was like, I am drowning in earth elements. All of my cards have earth elements, but only 2 of them had sun, and one of them was Absorb Corruption, which I didn't play a lot because I like the blight. So by getting that sun, I was able to repeat that power, let them break themselves against stone constantly.
And really quick...
Oh, one other thing I forgot. I'm so sorry. While I'm looking here at the board thingy, the leaf element reminded me. There was a moment where we had that when an event or blight card directly destroys presence, you may prevent any number of presents from being destroyed by paying 1 energy each.
Oh,
there was that time.
That's where you kept me alive.
One of the events. It might have been that event that gave us our element.
Maybe. There was many events I made us killed.
There were a lot.
One of the 2 times, at least.
Yeah.
I was randomly triggering that one because it takes a leaf element, which stone doesn't have a lot of. But I was happening waiting to play like my one leaf element card. And I was like, guys, this one random time I'm triggering this at the highest level, so who wants to stay alive? I have 3 money.
No one's gonna mention my reaching grasp that I drafted and like gave to you guys many times.
I never got it once.
You did what now?
I picked up reaching grass and sky stretches.
I remember you yelling about having the card. I don't remember.
No, it's.
I went super supportive. I was
This
giving
was
up
a very
energy
involved
and reach.
game.
Oh, you were,
by the way,
you were giving a lot of energy to like lure and read.
Sky stretches shore. I was making people fast, and we were attacking
No,
the
it was
coast.
very, very
I went
good.
real supportive with
You
You
helped
did.
lure and green
River.
a lot,
Yeah.
and luring
I never
green
gave it to you?
specifically. No,
I'm sorry.
No,
Well,
it's
'cause
fine.
you never gave me
You
Flame's
did
Fury.
help me with energy a few times.
Okay.
though, and that was actually really nice. But you were very supporty to lure and green, which is actually
Really
quite
were.
helpful.
What's nice about River is reaching grass and sky stretches to shore is just
sun element,
sun and water.
Water
And even
element.
Uncanny Melting, which was my blight removal card, I got to use Weave Together a Fabric of Place. And that was cool.
That was a really cool one to get around some adjacency things.
It basically
and-
makes 2 lands one,
Into
and you
one,
can like
right.
move the pieces however you want.
Yep.
So how did you incorporate that one into our game? Because I remember you playing it. I don't remember what happened.
I did another like setup for massive
You
flooding.
tied a mountain into a coastal sand.
Yeah, and I just moved them to the blighted land.
Yep.
So then I could attack them this slow.
Yep.
Smart.
Which is actually quite handy.
Sometimes I think, babe.
You're very thinky.
And
Nice.
as to my earlier
Yeah.
comment, I'm not trying to brag when I said that no one surmounted my kill count.
Oh, no,
That-
no.
I'm not saying that from the standpoint of like, look, I killed the most people, because I don't care. I'm saying like, look who's surprised if Wildfire had the most kills. Yeah, no one's surprised. I'm just saying I think it was really helpful to have Wildfire on the team, regardless of who played it.
No, I'm happy.
Oh
we
no,
had
you were doing
Wildfire.
great.
When we had a lot of that blight come in from the various event cards and you were able to keep us alive from not having to destroy all of our presents, it was really nice because Green was like, I don't really care. I can get my destroyed presents back. I'm fine with losing some of my presents.
was a
Because I've been
good-
losing my presents all game. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But you were able to like be that rock, pun intended, to keep us alive.
The synergy was really cool where, yes, maybe Josh wasn't feeling
Right.
as strong, but he was also preventing Ravagers or letting
Oh.
other people grow.
I feel like Josh and I were collaborating on at least half of the turns.
No,
Where
but
it's like, I'll do this if you do this for me.
yeah.
Right.
A lot of my biggest things, he enabled me to have an extra growth so I could get to the problem
He gifted
spot
proliferation to you a
and
lot.
then smack him back.
Yeah.
It
Which
might
was
be
really
my
good.
new second favorite. I love 3-player, but 5-player was really fun.
I really liked the wonky board we had.
I like the wonky boards.
We had
I
like a
liked-
crab. It was like a
Little
donut with
pincher movement.
It was
I
pretty
liked
cool.
working together with different synergies that maybe I didn't think of like River and Stone that often, or like
Right.
Wildfire and River, and I don't know. It's just
Dude,
like
River and Wildfire was like the fire and flood thing.
Yes.
Because you kept shoving people into my land. I spoke about how Wildfire doesn't like to go elsewhere because he kills his friends, but that's okay when you have other people sending bad guys to you. You were like putting a guy in a box and then Amazon shipping them to my
Yeah.
land, and then they were just immediately, all right, we got a new shipment of steaks that came in, let's put them on to Bobby. And just
roast. It was a great game.
It was hilarious
It
because
was really fun.
from the standpoint of comedic jokes, I was like, John, stop sending me your guys! He's like, it's the only way I get my land clear.
Yeah, I couldn't.
I didn't mind, in truth. It was just kind of funny. I'm like, oh, a new shipment of towns from John. Let's immediately cook them.
What do you
but
want
I
me
could.
to do?
That's the thing, though. It was great. It was a great team synergy because...
Once I got that Reclaim 1 that River has, I was using Wash
Right.
Away a lot to just keep pushing things
Yep,
towards you.
and it worked really well. So,
Habsburg was a really fun time.
I did have a lot of fun.
We had to constantly think about where are they going to ravage, where are they going to
Yeah.
gather from, where are we going to
Yep.
attack that's blighted.
Yep.
And no one really had destroy powers because we didn't pick those spirits with them.
I had a ton of fun because I was one of the scissors to the paper or the rock to the
Oh,
scissors.
yeah,
You know what I
you
mean?
were-
When you are one of the counter picks, I think it's a lot more fun for you.
Well, we did talk at the beginning about, what was it, on BGG? You asked, like, who'd be the best against these guys? And I was like, well, whoever the internet says is best, give me that person. So
We
if
just
you wanna
happened
be
to
part
look
of
at
it-
what the survey was at the time, and a lot of you said Wildfire.
And
Most of you,
said
almost all of
Stone.
you said Stone.
And Laura got to be Stone.
So I did your thing.
But you were liking Stone more and more.
Not
it
to
seems like.
spoil
I mean, I
part
love
2
Stone.
of this episode, but we're
But,
giving spoilers
I
away.
mean, you played as a character that maybe people didn't initially think of as going against Habsburg.
So
I think
here's my
River's okay,
grievance. Here's
actually.
Or
my
did they? I
grievance.
was out of the room for the whole list.
River's middling, but I think I shouldn't have picked River. It's just my
Yeah?
comfort spirit.
Well, I think
I should have have
was
went
not bad, though.
vengeance. I should have went vengeance.
I don't know. River was good, though, because you were able to give a lot of energy to characters that needed it. But the 2 damage to all invaders in a land was really nice.
That did
Furthermore,
help.
you were able to clear your board because you shoveled them into mine. Vengeance can't do that.
That's true.
I'm just saying there's a lot of value that River has. I honestly think that River is good against Habsburg.
Okay.
I'm not going to say great or perfect.
Or
I'm going to say,
counterpick.
right, I'm going to say this is actually a good spirit.
Devil's advocate to Ryan. We don't play vengeance very often because vengeance low-key sucks. But
So-
I got to get better with vengeance.
In-
once
all-
I find where I put the printout of original vengeance, we'll play him more. But this would have been a fun opportunity to play vengeance in a maybe more of vengeance.
So-
Oh,
element.
shucks. I guess we had to play Habsburg again.
So in all
Dang you darn, date
seriousness,
night?
my...
Date night.
A.
Ryan coming?
Oh.
Why not? If you allow it, so. I mean, in all seriousness, though, my emotions have a little bit settled on vengeance, and I think I had to accept some truths about the character. And once I did, I actually hated the character a lot less. And I actually started to appreciate that spirit. I think my problem was I was thinking from the standpoint of I want to play a spirit, and a measure of success for that spirit is if I can play and finish a game without flipping the blight card with this character. And I think I was perturbed initially by vengeance because I'm like, I don't see how you can play this character without blighting the board.
You can't.
So once I accepted, you know what? This character will blight the board. Just accept that. Once I accepted it, I actually realized that's where a lot of my ilk towards the character was. I'm like, you know what? I gave the spirit a lot of bad rap.
Because you're defensive
Because
minded.
I was always thinking of spirits are good if you can beat the game without blighting. But that's not what this character is. So I just had to have my worldview on this character kind of tweaked on that. And so in all seriousness, now that some time has gone by, I look at vengeance a lot more favorably. It's just I now have a more accurate calibration to where the spirit should go.
You just got to be in the right mindset when playing.
Right,
Vengeance.
and have maybe the good team build. You still want to be careful with certain team builds, but I don't look at the character nearly as negatively.
Situational.
For the sake of comedy, I will still indulge in a lot of vengeance bashing jokes.
I still
because
think I
it's
know
funny.
where I put that printout.
Laura!
She just will not give it up. So anyway, guys, we have gone way over, but that's totally fine because just like last time, there will be a part 2 where we will get to all of your comments and strategies. So I hope that you didn't mind our hashes about our own game. I hope all the newer beginner players out there may get some interesting strategies from trying to take on Habsburg in the future. If you don't have them, maybe you can be slightly prepared. And if you weren't looking at Wildfire or Vengeance in a good light before, well, here is some good news for you because, lo, I have a good theater for them to dance in where they actually have the spotlight on them and they look great, baby.
And
So-
don't forget to add that extra blight to the starting setup.
Yes.
For
Yeah.
those spirits.
As now a 2021 standard of living, we get +1 blight on all the things.
Yeah, it's fun.
So, alrighty, well, we will catch you all in part 2. Bye.
Farewell.
To be continued. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Kindred Spirit Podcast. We appreciate you taking the time to do so. Feel free to visit us on our Instagram and Facebook page. You can find me on our Facebook page at The Kindred Spirit Podcast. To get a hold of John, check out our Instagram page at the KSP123. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in future episodes.